So, we are currently staring down a massive, honestly kind of terrifying paradox in modern AI. We now have an artificial intelligence system that can physically take over your mouse and keyboard, and it operates completely without an application sandbox. Now, this isn't some simulated, tightly controlled testing environment. This is direct, unmediated access to your physical operating system. To really grasp the gravity of this, you have to think about what a sandbox actually does. In traditional computing, a sandbox is your safety net. It's a strict security boundary that physically stops a buggy or malicious app from reaching into your personal files, hijacking other programs, or just totally compromising your core system. But now, that boundary is completely gone. The AI operates natively across the entire surface of your system. The operational leverage here is absolutely unprecedented, but the security implications are structural and they are severe. When this feature was first announced on X, it racked up 57 million views in exactly 24 hours. 57 million. That is not just some vanity metric. It represents a massive, fundamental shift in user expectations. For years, we've all been conditioned to accept the basic chatbot interface, right? You type a prompt, you wait for some text, and then you have to go manually execute the actual work yourself. Well, that era is ending. We are moving aggressively away from passive chat and directly toward autonomous, operational execution. The demand isn't just about writing code or drafting an email anymore. People want frictionless end-to-end automation where the AI actually performs the click, navigates the web, and finishes the entire job autonomously. AI workflow specialist Ruben Hassid summarized this entire paradigm shift perfectly. He pointed out, Claude can now use your computer. Just let that sink in for a second. Use your computer. From a user perspective, everything changes with this update. You are no longer just interacting with a static software tool. You are literally commanding a digital agent. You can just text instructions from your phone, and it operates your physical desktop exactly like an employee sitting right at your desk. It physically moves the cursor, it types out messages, it navigates complex applications entirely on its own. It effectively transforms your host machine into an automated worker that just grinds through your requests asynchronously while you go do something else.
And that brings us right to the core conflict. On one hand, you have the massive viral hype of get a coffee while you work automation. It sounds amazing, right? But on the exact opposite side, you have the high-stakes security reality of zero application sandboxing. The capability to have an AI just run your laptop autonomously is undeniably powerful. No one is debating that. However, allowing an AI to execute actions across your entire operating system without strict isolation boundaries introduces structural risks that demand some exact serious technical scrutiny. Basically, you are trading a massive leap in personal productivity for profound system-wide exposure, and you absolutely cannot afford to ignore the architecture that makes this possible.
To really understand the risk here, we have to map out Claude's mechanical hierarchy. The system is programmed to be ruthlessly pragmatic. It strictly prioritizes the fastest, least error-prone method first. So Level 1 execution relies on connectors. If a native API integration actually exists for an app, like Gmail or Slack, Claude is going to route the action through that secure, structured pipeline. This is highly reliable because it's just communicating in pure code. Level 2 execution utilizes the browser, navigating Chrome directly through internal commands. But Level 3, sitting at the absolute bottom of this hierarchy, is screen interaction. This involves literal, physical mouse clicks and keystrokes. It's explicitly flagged in the documentation as the slowest and most error-prone execution method, simply because it relies entirely on computer vision rather than structured code.
The architecture basically dictates that screen interaction is strictly a fallback mechanism. So if a secure API connector just isn't an option, say you're using some custom internal company dashboard or some clunky legacy software, Claude defaults to this fallback method. It abandons the secure code pipelines, takes control of your physical mouse, and begins navigating your desktop exactly as a human would, relying purely on visual recognition. It literally has to look at the screen, interpret the pixels, figure out where the submit button is located, and physically drag the cursor over to click it. It's honestly a brilliant but highly fragile human-mimicking process.
But listen, even though it's the slowest fallback mechanism, the real-world viability of this is just undeniable. Look at the actual workflows Ruben Hassid successfully automated. He had it sourcing Fiverr freelancers autonomously, which generated 4 inbound offers in a matter of hours. The AI independently navigated the marketplace, identified viable candidates based on strict criteria, drafted the outreach messages, and hit send, all while he was physically away from the desk. Other successful operations included scheduling a daily scrape of viral advertisements and even commanding the AI to review dense AI research papers from the XR of A database. The system strings together these complex, multi-step workflows across distinct user interfaces remarkably well.
We really need to define the exact mechanical process powering these workflows, because it's wild. Screen interaction means the AI is taking continuous, rapid-fire screenshots of your desktop. That is exactly how it understands the interface. It is literally looking at the pixels to navigate your apps, read your data, and target its mouse clicks. There is zero back-end API separation here. This requires an immense, staggering volume of visual data processing. And right here is the absolute crucial vulnerability. If it's visible to your human eyes on that monitor, it is captured and processed by the model. The AI simply cannot selectively ignore sensitive information that happens to be sharing the screen with your target task.
That continuous visual capture creates systemic structural vulnerabilities. Let's break them down. First, the AI captures all visible personal and sensitive data. If you have a bank statement open in the background, it gets ingested, period. Second, there is a complete lack of sandbox isolation between the AI and your operating system. Third, Anthropic explicitly warns in their own documentation that their internal guardrails against sensitive actions are not absolute. Yes, the system is trained to refuse risky operations, but those behavioral safeguards are totally imperfect. If those guardrails fail, or if the model just misinterprets a visual cue, it can execute irreversible actions on your machine with full user-level privileges.
Now, this total lack of sandboxing creates a highly specific vulnerability when it comes to cascading actions. The documentation gives a really critical example of this. Imagine the AI is operating inside what you think is an isolated email application, and it clicks a hyperlink. That single action can automatically trigger Google Chrome to launch. See, the operating system doesn't know the difference between you clicking a link and the AI clicking a link. The action cascades instantly, completely bypassing your intended isolation. Even if you never explicitly granted the AI permission to access Chrome, the OS forces the link open anyway. This proves that local tasks can instantly trigger completely unintended, system-wide consequences.
Beyond just the terrifying security architecture, there is actually a lot of physical operational friction here too. The host machine must remain fully active and awake. You cannot just assign Claude a complex task, snap your laptop shut, and head into a meeting. It doesn't work like that. Like a really needy intern, it requires your physical machine to remain wide awake, screen on, rendering pixels so it can literally see what it is doing. If your screensaver kicks in or your computer just goes to sleep to save battery, that continuous visual loop breaks and your automated workflow immediately crashes.
Because of these cascading vulnerabilities and that constant, continuous visual capture, Anthropic explicitly restricts this tool from operating in specific domains. We're talking financial accounts, legal contracts, medical data, and gathering facial images. They actively, strongly advise against letting the AI manage or take any actions on these platforms. Just think about the permanence of a mistake here. If the AI hallucinates or even just misinterprets a screenshot while navigating your stock trading dashboard, it could execute a financial trade you never intended. In these restricted domains, the consequences of a simple visual misinterpretation are immediate, severe, and entirely irreversible.
Now, if you actually want to implement this system, you have to pass through some specific hardware and account gates. First, you have to download the official Claude desktop application, which currently supports Mac OS and Windows. Second, this capability is entirely locked behind paid personal tiers. You need a $20 Pro plan or a $100 Max plan. Why? Because the compliance and security complexities are just way too high right now for a team or enterprise rollout. A corporate IT environment simply cannot tolerate an unsandboxed agent taking continuous screenshots of proprietary company data. And finally, as we established, you gotta keep that host computer actively powered on and rendering the desktop. Once you actually get the software installed, you run right into these chronological, incredibly high-stakes system permission gates. First, you go into General Settings and toggle on Computer Use. After that, you must grant OS-level accessibility permissions and OS-level screen recording permissions. And listen, you are not just casually clicking Allow on some pop-up. You are granting the absolute highest-level keys you can possibly hand to a third-party application. In the cybersecurity world, these are literally the skeleton keys to your operating system. You are allowing a third party to simulate any physical human input and capture every single pixel rendered on your actual hardware. The final activation step is what bridges your desktop to your mobile via the Claude Dispatch Connection Gate. Basically, the desktop app generates a unique QR code. You scan this with the Claude app on your phone, and boom, the two devices are securely tethered together. This effectively turns your phone into a remote control. It allows you to trigger massive, heavy data scraping tasks right from your pocket, while your desktop does all the heavy lifting back at home. It perfectly bridges the gap between mobile convenience and hardware-intensive desktop automation.
But listen, because the AI absolutely lacks foolproof internal guardrails, the security burden falls entirely on you. You have to implement mandatory risk mitigation tactics. First, you must approve permissions for every single application individually. You must actively utilize the app blacklist. For instance, you absolutely need to permanently deny access to a password manager like 1Password, just so the AI doesn't accidentally screenshot your master vault during some routine task. You are also required to manually close any files with confidential information before triggering an action. And finally, you have to constantly monitor for prompt injection attacks. That's malicious hidden text on a website designed to specifically hijack the AI's visual reasoning and redirect its physical control of your machine.
Which leaves us staring down a pretty stark, totally unresolved trade-off. The official documentation and all the real-world testing absolutely confirms that this tool delivers immense, frictionless automation. It literally transforms complex multi-app workflows into simple text commands. But the hidden cost of that incredible leverage is continuous screen recording and absolute zero application isolation. So you have to ask yourself, is the operational leverage of an AI autonomously controlling your mouse actually worth the systemic risk of granting an access to an unsandboxed machine? Honestly, the answer to that depends entirely on your personal risk tolerance.